Well, hello there everyone! Kirby Squeak Squad sure is one of the video games of all time. Okay, in all honesty, I think it is a good game, and the idea of having a group of antagonists that repeatedly harass you throughout the game is cool, but the story feels like it was written by someone who knows nothing about Kirby. This game has a terrible habit of making you lose your copy ability every single time you take damage. This will be a recurring issue, as we see in this video, and its boss roster sure does exist. As I mentioned before in my Dreamland 3 boss ranking, I consider this game to have one of the weakest boss rosters in the series. While I do think the best boss is surpassing anything in Dreamland 3, it's also got considerably more bad bosses to take into consideration as well, and it's one of the only games to not have any incarnation of Wispy Woods as a boss, so it's an automatic 0 out of 10. But that's enough lamenting, we've got 10 bosses to cover, so let's dive on in, shall we? Number 10. Bobo. Do you like fighting an enemy with a giant hitbox that has barely any telegraphs in his attacks, and all his moves look about the same until he actually performs them? No, not really? Well, you're probably not going to like this boss fight then. Half of the floor in this arena is lava, so you have to be careful because if your ability touches lava, it's instantly gone, and if you touch lava, that's just a good bit of damage on you. And we can't forget, this is Squeak Squad, where every single hit makes you drop your copy ability. Bobo isn't unbeatable, but the fight is just downright frustrating with how little he telegraphs his attacks. Him flying in the background is kinda cool, but it's ultimately less than it's a less than fun nothing boss. And even with the whole gimmick of him being able to stun himself on the arena, it doesn't mean much when there was another boss that already did that gimmick much better earlier in the game. Number 9. Dark Nebula. The true final boss of the game, another remnant of dark matter, and boy is it disappointing. Instead of doing anything too unique, Dark Nebula just fires off a few star projectiles and swaps between the three elements of fire, ice, and electricity, which only actually gives him a single unique elemental attack and really just alters how he moves around the arena, being either spastically, in an up and down pattern, or in a circle. And he never even went ice mode in my fight with him when I got footage. For the most part, I actually really like the final world of Squeak Squad, but it ends on this note that is underwhelming at best due to how easy the fight is, or annoying at worst because despite being an ultimate ability, this is still Squeak Squad, so triple star gets lost every single time the boss hits you. Combine that with one of the most meh final boss themes in the series, and yeah, it's kind of a dud that would have been better if it was just a pinch phase at the end of the previous boss fight, instead of padding the game out an extra 10 minutes. Number 8. Mecha Kracko. I've been spelling Kracko's name wrong for years, why didn't anyone tell me? Ah fuck, I'm a Kirby fraud. Anyways, Mecha Kracko is the only boss in the game with 2 health bars, making it last way longer than any other fight in this game. Phase 1 is fine, it's just the Kracko fight that you know and love, and, well, hopefully love at least. But then he gets to his second health bar, and he starts removing the arena, pulling out these lightning attacks with absurd levels of hit stun, and because it's Kirby Squeak Squad, you lose your ability every time you get hit. And he can just bust out lightning nukes with next to no warning in a frustrating amount of range. The big reason he doesn't end up below the other two is he actually has a major weakness to fire, as it can shred his HP, but will also destroy the arena if not careful, and I kind of like the high risk, high reward nature it can provide. It's still a bad boss fight though, and probably the worst iteration of Kracko in the entire series. Number 7. Meta Knight. Oh, Meta Knight, how far you have fallen. Okay, to be fair, this fight has potential to be fun, as he has an awesome moveset, being an evolution of his moveset from Kirby Superstar, and seeing Meta Knight raise the halberd from the bottom of the ocean after the end of Superstar had it crash there is awesome, but Meta Knight is aggressive, and you're gonna get hit. And say it with me now, because this is Kirby Squeak Squad, whenever you get hit, you lose your copy ability. So after each hit you will take because he doesn't get stunned, you gotta pick your sword back up. This is by far the worst Meta Knight fight in the series for this one issue alone, and if you just kept sword on during the boss fight, it would have been fine, but you don't, so it kinda sucks. Number 6. King Dedede. Dedede isn't exactly putting up much of a fight here, moving around at a snail's pace for the most part of the battle, but he does still have his moveset from Superstar, and actually is an evolved version of it because his moveset now has the ability to summon minions into battle. They descend very slowly on Paracels, but it's actually kind of cute. He's the tutorial boss of the game as well, so I won't be too critical of this, but he doesn't really do anything crazy. In fact, in many ways, he plays it even safer than Wispy Woods, but once again, Dedede is the one keeping us all safe from Dark Matter's death and destruction, and Kirby, being a jerk in this game for no real reason, decides to go beat the crap out of him. Well, actually it's because he thinks that Dedede stole his cake, but like, why? Why would you think that? Number 5, Daroch. Daroch is kind of the main antagonist of the game, and you fight him twice. Overall, his first fight isn't bad by any means, but it's definitely not as good as his rematch, feeling like he just exists to get obliterated by the Ice Tornado, and having a surprisingly limited moveset. This is also where the game forces you to go back and find the 5 star seals if you haven't already done so to access the last quarter of the game, which I'm not the fondest of, but whatever, it's a Kirby game, you gotta have at least the final level locked behind a true ending, I guess. Sort of, sometimes, kind of, whatever. Overall, Daroch isn't bad, but he's not doing anything special, and yeah, his rematch is a lot better. Number 4, the Squeaks. Most levels in this game will have you encounter one of the Squeaks, foes that harass you throughout the game, stealing treasure including items needed to progress, like the 5 ceiling stars. Most of their fights are pathetically easy, but I still appreciate the idea of having these guys being a bit of a looming presence that Kirby has to handle. I don't have much to say on them, but I do think their inclusion is a net positive on the game overall, and there are occasionally some fights that get pretty creative. So I think putting them around the upper middle portion of the game, considering they're one of the better parts of this game, is a fair placement. Number 3, Mrs. Molly. Mrs. Molly is a foe that likes to attack you by going absolutely insane with the projectile spam, but that means the safest place to be is actually right in front of her, so the encouragement is to be aggressive in this fight. Most of this fight is nothing too special, but she gains a lot of extra points in my eyes thanks to her attack where she'll leap at you from the background, and what you want to do is not only dodge the attack, but position it so that she lands on the hard rocks to get stunned for a while, leading to a good damage opening. Overall, it's a simple fight, fitting of the second boss in the game, but it's one I actually like a good deal, and I think that little extra mechanic of the rock stunning does add quite a bit to it. Plus, hey, seeing a boss go into the background and leap at you is always kind of a cool thing, especially considering this was before the 3DS game, where they started really going crazy with background attacks. Number 2, Yetogine. I feel like this boss should have been later in the game, as it's got a good sense of scale and feels like a genuine threat with everything going on, but also, the boss has probably one of the biggest moveset varieties thanks to him gaining new attacks as he loses body parts. The fight being a bit more of a challenge, for the right reasons, than most bosses in this game, and the evolving moveset really do set this as one of the 2 bosses I actually think about for the right reasons when I think about the Squeak Squad boss fights. And the giant mecha hermit crab is just kinda cool. Kinda surprised he didn't return in Robobot, but oh well. Overall, I think Yetogine is one of the 2 really worthwhile bosses in this game, and kind of the reason why, if nothing else, maybe play this game once. It only takes about 4 hours to beat. It's not too bad. Number 1, Dark Daroch. For those that have played this game, this entry should come as no real surprise. Dark Daroch is generally considered one of the game's best bosses, and the guy that should have been the final boss of the game. His design is cool, he has a varied moveset, he's genuinely challenging, and his boss theme is the only original track in the game that I personally remember. He's got the makings of a Kirby final boss that feels like a much more fitting finale than the snooze fest that was Dark Matter, on top of actually playing a role in the story, and the best way to fight him is actually to be brave and take him head on. He's a good boss, and I'm happy he caps off the game's best world. There is technically a level and a boss fight after him, but as far as I'm concerned, Dark Nebula is just padding that should have been turned into a Phase 2 pinch mode to Dark Daroch. Overall, I can say that at least there's a pretty awesome fight at the end of this game, even if it's not the final boss of the game. And even though you do lose your copy ability after every hit, It's not as bad here because Dr. Roach isn't like this super spammy opponent, and it's actually sometimes better to fight him without abilities because you can do a lot of damage with double stars. And that's the boss fights of Kirby Squeak Squad. Certainly one of the video games of all time. I don't hate the game, and I think the Squeaks were overall a nice inclusion to the gallery of Kirby characters. It's a really short game though. Without much going on in it, you can beat it in about 4 hours and complete it in about 6. Worth playing if you like the series, but don't go out of your way to grab it. It's a DS game though, so you can play those things online free nowadays. If nothing else, I'm glad DeRoach would come back as a friend character in both Mass Attack and Star Allies, but yeah, not much else. That's all I've got for this video. Not sure which Kirby game I'll cover next, but I've got 2 more videos you can see up here on the end screen. And if you want to see more content of varying quality, consider liking and subscribing, and I will see you all next time. Take care.